Hi guys, I just want to talk about young girls who date older men, right? So years ago we used to do community outreach programs. So we'd go to these impoverished communities to see how we can assist, right? And together with the Department of Social Development, we'd go to specifically what is known as child-headed households. So these are households where children are raising themselves because their parents would have passed on, or in most instances they are orphans because they can't be placed in foster care. They don't have an option but to raise themselves in their own homes. So what would happen is when we get there, the department would then donate food parcels to those households, and they would call on communities to assist where they can. But in some instances, some communities are not able to do so because some of them have their own problems to focus on, right? So as it is, you'll see we're no longer raised by communities. So if you are thinking about having children, you should always keep in mind that children are no longer raised by communities, right? We park that aside for a second. So when we go into these environments, you get to realize that the absence of a male figure or a father is the number one root cause of why young girls fall into the trap of dating old men. It is the number one root cause of why these old men prey on these girls, because they know that that home is not protected by a male figure. So when we were having our one-on-one conversations with these girls, trying to understand their lifestyles, how do they make it, how do they survive, most of them would tell you that they survive by sending nudes to these old men in exchange for money. And some of them would actually go as far as asking us for money for airtime, asking for money for data, because they needed to have that in order to be able to, send their nudes, send adult content to these men in exchange for money. We also found out that some of these men, even though they know what the situation is in these children's homes, some of them were not really intent on, assisting without gaining anything in return, because they were mostly after their own needs. They would actually go to the point of exploiting these young girls, asking for sexual favors in exchange for money, because they knew that these girls were desperate for money. Some of these households are female only, so you'll get some of them prone to being raped by men who know that these girls are vulnerable. Some of these men would actually even go as far as grooming them, because obviously if you are living in an environment where you've never tasted pizza in your life, you've never tasted biscuits, you've never tasted chocolate on your birthday, you've never been bought a birthday cake, and you get an older man who is promising to even buy you cake on your birthday, and because it's something that you've never had in your life, you then fall in the trap of thinking that that person cares for you, because you've never had the opportunity to experience those kind of things in the world that you are living in. Right. So we found that most community members, some of them are aware of what is happening in these households, but because they don't want to get into trouble, they don't even want to meddle, or it's not their business, they end up not assisting these kids until a situation happens where maybe one of them passes on, or they've been unalived by these men who didn't get any sexual favors from these girls, and then it becomes a community problem where only then do they want to find out who was responsible for unaliving those young girls. Then we park that aside for a second. This is unfortunately going to be a long video, so you'll have to excuse me, right? So you found these girls who were doing these things because they didn't have a protection of a father figure. As it is right now, most children, most young girls, they look up to their own peers in how they should behave, in how they should act, in the things that they do. They look up to their own peers. On social media right now, we know who they are. The likes of your Tandos, who are these other ones? There are a couple of them here on social media. I just don't remember all of their names. Most of these young girls have flashy lifestyles. They do have active parents. Some of them may not, but we know that they do have parents who don't see an issue with their behavior, who are not calling out their own children for their behavior. We see young girls as, young as 16, flashing money on social media, flashing bouquets of flowers, expensive trips, clothes, shoes, bags, and the works. And they have parents who are condoning that lifestyle. Even the 16-year-old girl right now, we know that after she told us that she was celebrating her 4-year anniversary to this old man, it essentially means that this child was groomed. Sexually, she was groomed, and that constitutes rape. Because if you're celebrating your 4-year anniversary at the age of 16, how old were you when you started dating that person? The number one root cause, I am still insisting on why this is happening. It is because of the absence of an active male figure and an active father in that household. Men who are raising daughters and men who are actively involved in their daughter's life will never allow another man to take advantage of their daughter. But you get some of these men not being okay with something like that happening to their daughters, but they wouldn't mind doing the same thing to another person's daughters because it benefits them. But if it was something that was going to happen to their own daughters, hell would break loose, because men are territorial when it comes to their own children. After the story broke that this 16-year-old is dating this old man, this man has since not been arrested. If anything, she has been trending more than him. But there's no accountability placed on this old man. He hasn't been arrested. We don't actually even know where he is. Because when things like this happen, we always want to blame the young girl, and we always want to blame the behavior on this young girl on society. If her own mother does not have an issue with how her daughter behaves and what is being done to her daughter, how are we going to reprimand this girl? If she's able to drink with her mother, if she's able to go clubbing with her mother, if she is able to enjoy her current lifestyle with her mother, what are we going to tell this girl that will make sense to her? If I have to go deeper into this situation, I can tell you without fail that most of these old men are sick. Most of these old men are on ARVs, and most of these old men sleep with young girls to elongate their lives, to take advantage of these girls' youthfulness. And when you speak to men about why they shouldn't date young girls, they will tell you that, when a man gets older, they want young, feminine women, soft women with a low body count. But they are not taking into account the role they are playing in making sure that they are stealing the innocence of these young girls. So as a society, there is still a lot that we need to unpack about the fact that men are not usually held accountable for what they do to young girls. And maybe it is because we live in a patriarchal society, I don't know. But tell me now why it is that this man is not trending for what he has been doing to this girl for the past 4 years, if not even more than that. Why has he not been arrested? Why is his church still open? It is because men are hardly given the blame and held accountable for what they do in their own communities.